Masechet Gittin, Daf Ayin Vav. We begin with a Tosefta that expands on the case of the Mishnah. Tenor Banan, Harezik Yitech Amenat Shetisha Meshiat Abba Sheteshanim, Vamenat Shetenik Yet Beni Sheteshanim, Afapi Lo Nitkayem Atenai, Harezek Get. לפי שלא אמר לה אם תשמשי אם לא תשמשי אם תניקי ואם לא תניקי דברי רבי מאיר. So we begin with Rabbi Meir's opinion, who says that if a husband tells his wife, here is your get, and it will be effective on condition that you serve my father for 2 years, or on condition that you nurse this baby, my baby, for 2 years, even if the condition is not met, she does not serve the father or nurse the baby at all, not even 1 day, 0. Nevertheless, the get is valid. Why? Because the condition was not made with the proper formulation. He did not say the positive and the negative. If you serve father, then it will be a good get. If you do not serve father, it will not be a good get. He has to say that. He has to say both. If you nurse the baby, then it will be a good get. If you don't nurse him, then it will not be a good get. And so that's according to the Rabbi Meir. Just like Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, with them, Moshe made a double tonight with positive and negative formulation. This is the proper formulation. If it's not formulated correctly, syntax error, the condition falls away as if it does not exist, as if he said, Harezi gitech, here's your get, without any condition, and she doesn't need to do anything. The get is valid. Hachamim say the condition formula is valid, and therefore, if she fulfills the condition and serves her father or nurses the child, then the get is effective. If she does not fulfill the condition, then it's not a get. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer en lecha tenai b'ketuvim she'eno kaful. Rashbag says a statement that we're not sure what it applies to. He says there is no condition mentioned anywhere in Tanakh that is not doubled, the positive and negative formulation. So now we're going to figure out what was Rashbag talking about. Ika da'amre l'Rabbi Meir kamar la, ve'ika madamre l'Rabanan kamar lehu. Some say that he was responding to arguing against Rabbi Meir, and some say that Rashbag was responding to an arguing against Rabbanan. Some say he's arguing against Rabbi Meir by saying that there is no example of a condition mentioned in Scripture that is not doubled. And since there are many of them, 2 or more, anytime you have 2 or more examples of something, so then you cannot use that as a paradigm for elsewhere. This is called the binyan av. If something is mentioned once, that a certain word means that, or a certain law involves this, and it says it only once, we could use that as a paradigm that everywhere else also it should apply. However, if the Torah says it 2 times or more, then that means it's specific. Only those times you cannot derive other laws from it on analogy. Otherwise, why would it say the same thing 2, 3, 4 times? And so since it always says a condition with a positive and a negative, that means only in those cases was it necessary to do both positive and negative, but it does not mean that in all other cases you have to, and therefore this is against Rabbi Meir. And if a husband makes a condition only with one statement, that's sufficient, because you cannot learn from Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, because there are other cases. So we apply this rule, we do not learn from them. But others interpret him exactly the opposite, that Rashbag is arguing against Rabbanan and saying that every example of a condition in Tanakh is doubled, and therefore we do learn from that, right? The Torah is giving you in stories and showing you, look, this is how you make it tonight. And so of course it's going to have every condition doubled, because that's the proper formulation, right? It wouldn't make sense for it not to, because that would be an improper formulation. And since Torah leads by example, and every example is that way, therefore we do learn that every example in halakha has to be doubled, and that proves Rabbi Meir and argues against Rabbanan. All right, Ur minhu. Now we have a challenge to that first baraita. That the first baraita had Rabbi Meir and Chachamim, and now we have a second baraita where they seem to say the opposite of what we would expect them to say. Meta av or meta ben. So same setup. The husband says, here's your get on condition that you serve father or nurse this baby for 2 years, and then the father dies or the child dies, and so she is not able to, even if she wanted to, fulfill the condition for 2 years. So the Rabbi Meir says this is not a get because the full condition wasn't fulfilled, even though it was out of her hands. It's not fulfilled. But you see that this baraita adds in that that the person died, but that infers that if the person didn't die, then it would be a good get. If the wife served the father or nursed the baby for 2 years, then it would be a good get, even though it looks like it's formulated in only one way. And that's what Rabbi Meir says, that it would be a valid get, if not for the death. So that goes against Rabbi Meir, who said before that it has to be doubled, and it will be a good get no matter what, that we ignore the condition. Continuation of the Braita, Chamim omrim, afa pi shelo nitkaim hatanai hareze get, yechola hi shetomar lo, ten li abicha va'ashameshenu, ten li bincha va'anikenu. Hachamim say, even if the condition was not fulfilled because the person died, the get is still valid, because she can say, listen, I'm here, I'm available and willing to fulfill the condition. Bring your father here and I will serve him. Bring the baby here and I will nurse him. Well, they're dead. That's not my problem. I am available to fulfill the condition, and therefore even if the condition is not fulfilled, the get is still valid. That goes against what Chachamim say here, that only if the condition is, if she does what the condition says, then it's a get. If not, it's not a get. So this seems to contradict. Kashal de Rabbi Meir ad Rabbi Meir, v'kashal de Rabbanan ad Rabbanan. And so we have a contradiction both with the two Rabbi Meirs and also the two statements of Rabbanan. So we answer it. Rabbi Meir la kashya hatam bedela kafle litnae, hacha bede kafle litnae. And so we say no. In the first baraita, that where Rabbi Meir said is no good no matter what, meaning the condition we ignore no matter what, and the get is valid, that's because the husband did not double the conditional statement. Whereas in this second baraita that we just quoted, even though it doesn't say so, we're assuming that he did make a double condition, right? It doesn't say so. We're adding that in, and therefore, if she did fulfill it, and if she was able to fulfill it and did, then it would be a good get. ורבנן עד רבנן לקשה, מן חכמים דהכה, רבן שמעון בן גמליאל היא, דאמר כל עכבה שאינה המנה, הרי זה get. And Rabbanan do not contradict each other, because the second braita is the opinion, even though it says it's mentioned as Chachamim, that's because the second Braita is assuming that would be the majority opinion, and that halacha should follow it. But really, it's the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, who says that any hindrance that is not from her part, that she was willing to do anything she can, but the circumstances are such that she cannot fulfill it, the get is valid. And Rashbag argues against Chachamim up here, that says she actually has to fulfill it literally, and if she does not fulfill it literally, no matter whose fault it is, it's not a get, and so that resolves that contradiction. It's a different author. Next, Teno Rabbanan, Amar la bifnei shnayim, harei gitech amana shetamashii et abba sheteh shanim, v'chazar v'amar la bifnei shnayim, harei gitech amana shetitini li 200 zuz. לא ביטל דברי האחרון את הראשון, רסתה משמשתו, רסתה נותנת לו 200 zuz. A husband says in front of two witnesses to his wife, here is your get on condition that you will serve father for 2 years. And then later on, he says in front of two witnesses, here is your get on condition that you give me 200 zuz. So now he has two different conditions. So how do we resolve this? So the second one does not cancel out the first. Rather, it's giving an extra choice. You have a choice. You can either serve father for 2 years, or she can give him 200 zuz. So the second giving with the second condition is adding another option, right? She can choose option A or option B. אבל אמר לה בפני שיניים הרי זיקיתך על מנת שתתני לי 200 זוז, וחזר ואמר לה בפני שיניים הרי זיקיתך על מנת שתתני לי 300 זוז, ביטל דברי האחרון את הראשון. However, if at first the husband gave his wife a get in front of 2 witnesses and said, here's your get on condition that you pay me 200 zuz, and then he gave it to her again in front of 2 witnesses and said, let's assume it's another 2 witnesses, right, 2 different people, 4 people altogether, 2 from the first testimony and 2 witnesses that see the second testimony, and says, here's your get on condition that you give me 300 zuz. In this case, it's not a choice, 200 or 300, because that wouldn't make sense. Then she would just give the 200. What would be the point of him increasing it if she can choose the original? Rather, it's clear in this case that his second giving is, his second statement, condition, is meant to override the first one. The first one is nullified, and so, right, she lost her chance to get it for 200. Price went up. Now she has to give 300. Okay, so that's pretty clear. And then the last statement is not clear. You cannot combine one of the pair of the first pair of witnesses and another one from the second pair of witnesses, right? If you have A and B saw the first condition and C and D heard the second condition, you can't pick out A and C to testify. Well, what would they testify about? Because they saw different conditions. But they could both testify the common denominator, which is that we know that there was a condition. If she comes and says, look, I have a get, so these, let's say you can't find the both witnesses to the first or both witnesses to the second, but you only have A and C, or A and D, or B and C. So those 2 cannot come together to say, wait, there was a condition here. They cannot testify together. So now we ask, ahaya, this last statement, what is it modifying the first case or second case? It doesn't make that sense that it would modify the second case, because in the second case, the first condition is nullified. So that witness that saw the husband say, here's your get on condition that you give me 200 zuz, but the husband nullified that entire deal. So that witness is really a witness to nothing. So it's obvious that he could not testify together with anybody. He can't testify at all. Ela aresha, rather, it's telling us about the resha, where there's 2 options. He said in front of A and B, option 1, you can serve father, and then in front of C and D, second option, you can pay 200 zuz. So both pairs of witnesses are valid witnesses, and so you might have thought that maybe they can combine, so they cannot. So now we say, Pishita, obviously they cannot. They saw different things. All right, how could they testify together? I might have thought, if it's 2, testify to the existence of a condition, even though there were different conditions, but they can both come together and say, wait, she didn't fulfill whatever condition it was. There is a condition there and she didn't fulfill. I might have thought that they can combine together to say that common denominator, and that's why the end of this baraita says, no, they cannot come together. All right, next Mishnah. Harei gitechim lo bati mikan ad sheloshim yom, vaya holech miYehuda leGalil, higia laAntipras, vechazar batel tenao. Husband gives a get to his wife and says, here is your get on condition that I do not return from now until 30 days. Now, as we're going to see 3 cases of the same thing, and for each one, it really depends on where he lives and where he's going. So the idea is that, let's say he lives in Judea, right? That's the south over here, and he's going to the Galilee, right? He's saying that, listen, I'm going, but if I do not return within 30 days, then this is your get. In other words, I'm not going to leave you a long time, and if I leave, and who knows what happens to me, here is your get. So, in order for this get to be valid, you need 2 things to happen. Number 1, he has to leave Judea. And second, he has to not come back, right? He has to leave and not come back. So the question is as follows. He is, let's say, in Jerusalem, that's in Judea, and he gets to Antipatris. So you see, Antipatris is kind of on the border. Is it south or north? And this Mishnah is teaching us that if he gets to Antipatris, that's considered Galil. That's considered that he left Judea. So indeed, he left. And then he chazar, and then he came back, right? Let's say, right, he made this condition day 1. Day 2, he goes to Antipatris. Day 3, he comes back to Jerusalem. And then day 4, he leaves again and goes up north and doesn't come back for 2 months. That's the question. So, although he did not come back for a long time, and you might have thought that, oh, look, he didn't come back for a long time, so therefore the get should be valid. So we're teaching us that no, because at the beginning he left, and he went to Antipatris, which is already out of Judea, it's already in the Galilee, and he came back, so the condition is already null and void, right? Because he left, and he came back within 30 days. So even though later he left and didn't come back, since the condition was already voided, there is no get. Batel tena'ah, right? He voided the condition. Second example is the same thing, but the other way around. He says the same condition, but in this one, he lives in the Galilee. So he's up here, let's say he's in Tiberia, and he gets to Kefar Otnai, which is more south, so that's considered leaving the Galilee. That's south enough that he has left. And he goes back home, so that's it. The condition is invalidated because he left, and he came back within 30 days. And that's it. You can't use that get anymore, right? Because that giving of the get is canceled out. Because the condition was already canceled. He left and came back, which means that even after, if he goes away for a long, long time, still the get will not be good because he already left, came back, and so the condition has falls away. Same formulation, but this time, this guy lives in Israel, and he's planning a trip overseas. Once he gets to Akko is considered outside of the land of Israel altogether. And so, if he's living in Judea, he says, listen, if I'm going on a trip, if I go and I do not return within 30 days, then this get will be valid. So he left, he got to Akko, and he returned within 30 days. So that's it. The get is batel, right? The condition was not fulfilled. And then even if he leaves after and stays for a year, the get will not be effective. And last case in the Mishnah, a person, husband says, this is your get as long as I depart from you for 30 days, right? If at any time from now on, if I pass from before you, right? Meaning I'm not seen by you for 30 days. So here it doesn't matter if he travels or not, or if he's, in next door, but never sees her, right? If you don't see me pass before you for 30 days, then this is your get. And even if every day he comes and goes and comes and goes, and he's always passing by, and he sees her and she sees him, nevertheless, it is a good get because they were not secluded together. When we say Keneged Panaich, it means that we'll be together in seclusion, in an intimate way. So the Evor doesn't mean simply not being in your presence physically, but it means being present in seclusion, in the way that a married couple would be. All right, that's the last case. Now, the Gemara asks, Lememra de Antipras beGalil hava kaima, urmin hi Antipras bihuda, uchvar otnai beGalil, bentayim atilin oto, lechumra megoreshet vehena megoreshet. Going to our Mishnah, it sounds like Antipras is part of the Galilee, because it says if someone's in Judea, and they go to Antipras, that's considered as if they left Judea and were in the Galilee, so they left and they came back. And that's why the condition is not fulfilled. But we have a contradiction because there's a Braita that says Antipras is part of Judea. Kfar Otnai, right, that's here, Kfar Otnai is the Galilee, and all the space in between is Sefek. And therefore, if we have a case like this, where he went somewhere in between, and came back and made the condition like this, so then we're not sure. Does that mean that he left and came back? Or he didn't leave and came back, so then she will be megoreshet and not megoreshet. She'll need another get. If he dies, she'll need to get halitza. But it clearly says that Antipras itself is part of Judea, and so how can we resolve the Mishnah with this baraita? Amar Abaye teretena eka amar la. Abaye said you understood the conditions in the Mishnah all wrong. In fact, the Mishnah is assuming two conditions different from the way we understood it earlier. Condition number one is, listen, I'm not going to go away, and if I leave and go to the Galilee, then the get will be effective immediately, right? The husband is ensuring, this is not about the husband getting lost, but rather about the husband saying, I'm going to stick around, I'm going to be here. If I leave, right, she says, I don't want you to leave on a business trip or whatever. She says, okay, if I go to the Galilee, this will be a get immediately. Furthermore, if I am on the road for 30 days and don't come back, even if I don't leave Judea, this will be a get, right? If I get lost somewhere on the way, so if I actually leave, it's a get right away. If I don't leave, but I don't come back for 30 days, it will also be a get. That's the two ways it can be a get. הגיע לאנטיפרס וחזר, דלה לגליל מטה, ולה ישתהו ינמה ישתהה תלתין יומין, בטל תנאו. This person, since he went to Antipras, which is not in the Galilee, right? We said that's the southernmost border, but it's still northernmost border, but it's still part of Judea. So that condition was not fulfilled, and he didn't get lost for 30 days. He came back within the 30 days. And therefore, neither condition is fulfilled, and that's why the condition is void, and there is no get. So that resolves it. In our original interpretation, we thought that would mean Antipras means he went to the Galilee. He says, no, I mean, he didn't go to the Galilee, and these are the two conditions. Okay, we're going to see the same, similar exercise next. The third clause of the Mishnah says, if a person lives in Israel, it says, listen, if I don't come back, I'm going on a trip, and if I don't come back within 30 days, then this will be a good, then this is your get, and he goes to Akko. So we assume that meant that Akko is not part of Israel, that's considered a different country, that's overseas. Because he went to Akko and came back, and it was within 30 days. But Rav Safra said that when the sages would take leave from each other, right, mipatere, same word as haftara, to end their meetings. And so when rabbis from outside of Eretz Yisrael would come visit rabbis in Israel, so the rabbis in Israel would accompany them to the edge. See, the rabbis that live outside of Israel, they're allowed to go back home. But anyone who lives in Israel, there's a prohibition to leave the land of Israel, unless for some very important reason. So they would go only to the border, and they would not go further. So how far would they take them before they took leave? It says in Akko, that's where they would go, and the rabbis that lived in Israel would stop there and say goodbye, because you're not allowed to leave the land of Israel. That means that Akko is part of Israel. So this contradicts what we thought, that this is saying that Akko is outside the land of Israel, and so we have the same answer. Condition number one is, don't worry, I'm not going away, I'm not going very far. And if I should leave the land of Israel and go overseas, this will be a get. That's condition one. Furthermore, if I travel too much, even within the land, and don't come home for over a month, then also it will be a get. So even if he goes pretty far, he goes right to the border of Akko, right at the border, but Akko is part of Israel. So the first condition is not fulfilled, and he doesn't travel for more than 30 days. He comes back within 30 days. So neither condition was fulfilled. Since the condition is void, the get is valid. All right, and now the last clause. Right, here is your get if I depart from your presence for 30 days. And now we ask, wait, you said that if he comes and goes, sees her all the time, every day, still it is a good get, but he didn't leave her presence. So Rav Huna explains that being before your presence means having marital relations. Why is it called from your presence? We want to be use nice language. So we don't want to be so explicit. So we say, right, to see your face. But really we mean that they should be secluded together such that they could have tashmish. They have to have marital intimacy. At least once a month. That's what he meant. If I don't come home and live together with you at all for 30 days, then you have a get. So that's what the word panaich means. That's interpretation number one. Rabbi Yochanan amar lo'olam panaich mamash mikatani harezo migoreshet hareze get katane tela have get yashan ulchi malu tilatin yome have gitar. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, understand it literally, that if I don't see your presence at all, and if he's coming and going, then they are not divorced, actually. It doesn't say, harezo megoreshet. They're not divorced because the condition is not fulfilled. He's seeing her every day. But it doesn't say hare megoreshet. It says hareze get. The get is still valid in the sense that it will be usable in the future. It's not a get yashan. A get yashan is a get that the husband wrote on a certain day but didn't give it yet. And after he wrote the get, they are secluded together, the husband and wife. At that point, midrabanan, they say don't use that get anymore. Because, let's say they are beichud together and they have relations and have a child. So if you calculate that child, someone can calculate that child was conceived after the date in the get. And that will lead to false rumors that the child was conceived out of wedlock because of that date. And so therefore they said, if you wrote a get and then the husband and wife were together, you cannot use that get anymore. In this case, you don't have to worry about that because they just came and went, meaning he was around his wife, but in public. Now, they were not secluded together, and therefore, they're not migoreshet, they're not divorced, but the get is still valid, such that if at some time in the future, let's say he came and went for a while, but then at some later date, he was away for 30 days and actually literally didn't see her face for 30 days, then the condition will kick in and they will actually be divorced. Good. Tanya kivateh de Rabbi Yochanan. A Braita supports Rabbi Yochanan's reading of the Mishnah. Same case as Mishnah. Here is your get if I am not present before you for 30 days straight. And so then he was coming and going. Since he was not alone with her, he was not secluded, therefore the get continues to be valid, and it's not called a get yashan because they were not secluded together, but they are still married until he actually goes away for 30 days. Velechu shema pies. Now we ask on that interpretation, wait, how do you know? Maybe during that time when he was coming and going, maybe they were together and secluded, and maybe at that time he appeased his wife and said, you know what, let's not get divorced, right? How do we know that didn't happen, and therefore that would be a get yashan? Amar Abba bar Rav Huna hachi amar Abba Mari mishemet Rav beomer nemenet alai lomar shelo bati. And so here we apply what Abba, the son of Rav Huna, said, the name of Abba Mari, in the name of Rav, that we're talking about a case, meaning this is true, this halacha is true only when the husband says, my wife is credible to me to say that I did not come, right? Go ask her if we were secluded together. She says no, right? Then you can believe her that we were not secluded. So in other words, we will only be able to use this get in the future if indeed he and she said that they were not secluded together. Now this statement in the name of Rav, some apply it not to the Braita that we just had when they come and go, but rather to the following Mishnah. This is the next Mishnah that we're about to read. When the husband says, here is your get from now, if I do not return from now and within the next 12 months. And then he dies before the 12 months is up. That is a good get. And now we wonder, why don't you worry? Maybe in the meantime that he appeased her and decided, you know what, let's not be divorced. Amar Rabba Bar Rav Huna Hachi Amar Abba Mari Mishmed Rav V'omed Emenet Alai Lomar Shelo Ba'ati. And here's where they applied the statement of Rav that he says she is credible that I did not come, we were not together, I did not appease her, and therefore the get should continue, right? Even though he was around during some of that period before he died. But since he gave the get and he said it will apply from now if I should not come back, and now he's dead, so there's no way he's going to be around. We can, they testify, she says, no, he did not come and appease me, therefore it is a good get. So some apply it to this Mishnah rather than to the preceding Baraita. Now, the one who applies it to the Mishnah, all the more so would apply it to the Baraita, because in the Mishnah, he says, I'm leaving if I don't come back in 12 months. And so here, it's less likely that there was a possibility that he came back and appeased her. So if you apply it here, you have to make sure that she says, no, he didn't come back in between and appease me, then all the more so you would have that requirement in the Braita where he is around. He's coming back and forth and seeing her all the time. So then all the more so, she would have to testify, he did not come and be secluded with me and appease me that whole time. However, the one who applied it to the Braita would say you only have to do it in the case of the Braita when he's available and around all the time. We have to make sure, did he come anytime and appease you? She says no. But that person would not require it in the case of the Mishnah, because Mishnah, he goes away. And he's not around, and so there's less chance, and therefore that he came by, and therefore we don't have to check to make sure that he did not appease her. All right, next Mishnah. The husband says, here is your get if I do not return from now until the conclusion of 12 months. He dies in the middle of them. So that is not a get, because he didn't say that it will be applicable from now. So therefore we assume it means it will be applicable in 12 months. If he goes away and doesn't come back for 12 months, then the get applies at the end of the 12 months. The problem is here that he died, let's say in the middle, in 6 months. Well, you can't have a get after death until death do us part, and so there is no get afterwards. So therefore she is a widow, she is not a divorcee. However, the if he adds in the word me'achshav and says, here is your get that will apply from now if I don't come back within 12 months, and he dies within that 12 months, and it is a good get, because once that 12 months comes, well, surely he's not going to come back because he's dead, but it applies retroactively from the time he gave it, and that was before he died, so the get does apply because it takes effect before the death. אם לא באתי מכאן ועד 12 חודש, כתבו ותנו לאשתי. כתבו גט בתוך 12 חודש ונתנו לאחר 12 chodesh eno get. If he says, listen, he tells some other people, if I don't come back within 12 months, I want you to write and give a get to my wife. And now they went and wrote it within the 12 months, even though they gave it after 12 months, it's not a good get because that goes against his instruction. He said, I want you to write it and give it after 12 months. They wrote it too early, no good. If he's, on the other hand, switched around the order of his statement and said, Kitvu utnu get lishti, im lo bati mikan ad shenem asar hodesh, so now you see there's some ambiguity. Does the 12 months apply only to tenu or also to kitvu? So katvu betoch shenem asar hodesh v'natnu la'achar shenem asar hodesh eno get. According to Tanakama, this is also not a good get. We assume that the kitvu utnu, write it and give it, if I don't come back within 12 months, we assume that the writing and giving it also it has to be after the 12 months. In other words, if I don't, same as before, if I don't come back within 12 months, then you can write it and give it, but you can't write it earlier than that, and therefore it's not a get. Rabbi Yosef Omer, kazeh get. Rabbi Yosef disagrees, and he says, as long as they gave it after 12 months, he said kitvu. The word kitvu comes first. So kitvu, write it whenever you want. But tenu, if I don't come back after in 12 months, then you can give it to her after 12 months. But writing it earlier is okay if you have this formulation, according to the Biyoseh. Last case, katvu la'achar shenem asar chodesh, ve'natnu la'achar shenem asar chodesh, umet, אם הגט קודם למיתה הרי זה גט, ואם מיתה קדמה לגט, אינו גט, ואם אין ידוע, זוהי שמרו מגורשת, ואינה מגורשת. If they write the get after 12 months, say he made the same condition as before, and either of these formulations, and they give it also after 12 months. So now we have no problem. He said to give it, write it after 12 months, and they did it after 12 months. And now he died after the 12 months. So then it just depends on the order. If they gave the get before he died, it's a valid get because the get came first. If he died before they gave the get, then it's no good. If it's not known, because let's say he's away, and he went away and we don't know exactly when he died compared to when they gave the get. So in that case, she is divorced and not divorced, meaning it's a safek, and if he died without children and has a brother, she would require chalitza. Tana, rabotenu hitiruha lihinase. And we have a braita that says the rabbis permitted her to get married. This is modifying the first case in the Mishnah that the husband says, here is your get if I do not return within 12 months. He doesn't say from now. Sounds like the Mishnah said that means it would take effect after 12 months, but he dies in the middle, therefore it's not a get. Arguing on the Mishnah, the Baraita says that the rabbi said she's permitted. Let's see why. Naman Rabotenu, who are these rabbis who permitted this case? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel Bedina de Sharu Mishcha Sabri La Kerebi Yoseh Damar Zemano Shel Shtar Mochiach Alav. Shemuel explains that this is the same Bet Din that permitted oil manufactured by non-Jews. That Bet Din was the Bet Din of the Yehuda Nisi'ah, that's the grandson of the Yehuda Hanasi. So they were famous because it was very hard for people to follow this takana, this gezerah, not to use oil of non-Jews, and so they permitted it. Happens to be that that's the same Bet Din that permitted this case, and their reasoning was that they followed Rabbi Yosef, who said, if a husband makes a condition, even if he doesn't say from now, but the get has a date on it, so we assume he meant the date on the get. Since he's giving a get with today's date on it, here is your get if I don't come back in 12 months. So we assume, even if it doesn't say from now, we assume the date on the get, which is from now. And so even if he dies in the middle, the get is effective immediately. And that's why this case would be the same as if he said me'achshav, according to Rabbi Yosef. Now, according to that Baraita, sounds like the sages permitted it, and therefore halacha should be that way. However, Amar Rabbi Abba bered Rabbi Chiya bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. That one was before we just said Shemuel. Now from Bavel. Now we have Rabbi Yochanan. His contemporary from Eretz Yisrael says, Rabbi Yehuda Nisi'ah beno shel Rabban Gamliel bar Rabbi Hora velo hodu lo kol si'ato v'amri la kol sha'ato. So Rabbi Yochanan says this Bet Din, this is Rabbi Yehuda Nisi'ah, the son of Rabban Gamliel, who was the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. He taught that this case is permitted and we should follow the Yosef. However, he was a minority opinion, and si'ato, his colleagues, did not agree with him. That's one version. Another version is she'ato, all of his life, even though he kept teaching that this should be the halacha, they did not agree with him. This is interesting, this difference between si'ato and she'ato, because you can see this is an oral change, right? This is not written. One's written with a samech, one's with a sheen, and so one would not confuse one with the other if it was in writing. But if this was transmitted orally, then one sounds like the other. So this is a good proof that this teaching was transmitted orally, and this is one data point in proving that the Talmud in general was transmitted orally and was not written. Okay, anyway, according to this, there's only the Biudan Nasi'ah's opinion, but not the general opinion. General opinion is, as the Mishnah says, the get would not be valid. Amar Rabbi Elazar lehahu Saba. Rabbi Elazar, a student of Rabbi Yochanan, asked a question to a certain elder who was around and was a member of the court of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi'ah at that time, who that discussed whether it be permitted. Ki sherituha le'altal sherituha o lacha shenem asar chodesh sherituha. Says when you were part of that court and you permitted it, this elder permitted it. When you permitted it, did you say immediately, or did you mean that she still has to wait 12 months? Le'altar shertuha deha la'ate, o dilma lacha shenem asar chodesh shertuha deha ikayim le'tena'o. Here's the two sides. Again, the husband says, here is your get. If I don't come back within 12 months. And he dies, let's say, after 6 months. So, according to this elder in the Biuda Nasi'ah, it will apply retroactively. Good. Because of the date in the get. But the question is, can she go ahead and get remarried immediately after the husband died? And will consider her a divorcee, since he's not going to come back. So even though you don't have to wait the 12 months, he's dead. He's certainly not coming back. So it's for sure that the condition will be fulfilled, and therefore and it will be fulfilled retroactively. So therefore, let her get married right away. Even if he dies without children as another brother, you don't need chalitza. She is a divorcee. Or do we say, wait a second, the condition was if I don't come back within 12 months, and the 12 months is not up yet. So you have to, even though he died in the middle, but the condition is 12 months, so therefore you have to wait 12 months, and once 12 months comes, then it will trigger the condition that he has not come back, and only then she can get remarried. Okay, that's the question. We don't have an answer to it. We just wonder, Rabbi Elazar, how come he asked about that case? Why wasn't he ask on the second case of the Mishnah, which is valid according to everyone, when the husband added me'achshav, here's your get that will be effective from now if I don't come back within 12 months, and he dies after 6 months, that is a valid get. And that's where Rabbi Elazar should have asked his question. Is the get valid immediately after he dies, because he's definitely not going to come back, and so surely the condition will be fulfilled and it will be retroactive, so let her get married right now as a divorcee. Or maybe we have to wait till the end of 12 months, because only then will the condition be fulfilled. And even though we know for sure it will be fulfilled, but right now it hasn't been fulfilled, so you have to wait till the end of 12 months, and then retroactively it'll be good. And so we should have asked on that, and we say, this is, you're right, he really could have asked that question, his question on the second clause, but because this elder was present at that time and he was there in the discussion, so he's asking him, according to his opinion, within that discussion, what would you say about that case that you were discussing? But he could have equally asked the question on the second case, but in any case, we don't have an answer to either version of the question. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.